Welcome everyone. I'm Nick from Breda and today I'm going to share you about my story of digital twinning. For now, please imagine the day that we could travel to space and time. Close your eyes and think of a moment where you are inside of your dream. Isn't that amazing? What we have seen in the past is that every time we travel, we have to congest. And what we can see coming up today is that we no longer have to do so. Because due to the corona crisis, we have seen a good influence in the amount of congestion we pollute every day on the streets. Up to 89% less pollution in the middle of March when the globe was in lockdown. And this has led to 11,000 less deaths in Europe alone. So think about the impact we are making while not traveling on the old way. So what if we could travel on a healthier way? Because not traveling might not be the solution for everyone, or at least not in the long term. So how can we travel again on a healthier way? That was a question I asked myself when I was organizing a lot of physical events and no longer had the opportunity to do so due to the lockdown. So close your eyes and think of that place and time where you want to go to. Think of it and having no actually damage on the planet while doing so. Open your eyes again and feel that sensation. Feel that you're there and feel that your dream is coming closer to you. Only your head, but let's get a little bit further in that. 50 years ago, real estate developers started drawing in 3D, meaning buildings and assets that are out there, our houses, our schools, our buildings, were drawn on a piece of paper. 40 years later, in the last 10 years, they were able to manage to get all buildings into a digital twin. And that means that all assets that are being created in the future also have a copy of themselves online. So we could actually perhaps already walk in those buildings online. And this, for me, this gave me a new idea to look into the trend of digital twinning. Digital twinning is when we take assets and we draw it in 3D right from the start and afterwards make it in the real world, an exact copy of it. But what happens today is that our technology has improved a lot. So the other way around, having physical assets, for example, churches from back in the 1800s or cultural heritage that has been there for quite some time, like bunkers and historical places, and we could out of a sudden digital twin those. We've been helping companies to get their assets into a digital twin in the corona crisis, because they were not able to organize events like I was not able to do anymore. Physically meeting each other out of a sudden was out of the game. So this is a co-work space. And it looks like a picture, but it's actually a VR environment. An environment where you and I can meet each other again in a digital twin environment. But this is just an asset. What if you look at all things that we have digitized today? For example, all the data that we collect in buildings, in factories, in operations, while fabricating, all our processes, and we could add that data into the digital twin asset, into a static assets. That would look a little bit like this. Having a whole city in your fingertips, understanding what's going on, understanding where is waste, where we can reduce waste, where we can improve the environment, where we can make this environment more healthy. And this This is the era we are going to get into. Today, we can imagine a full world, the whole planet, to have a digital copy of itself, due to the immense change in technology, in making technology more accessible. For example, 360 cameras and photogrammetry, VR headsets that are nowadays getting more and more affordable for the general public, for the consumers. And what if all of that is digital twinned? What would you do? Where would you go to? Where would you travel to? This is one of the examples of what happens. The Notre Dame had a serious injury, it was broken down, and there was a company that had found a scan online of the devils of the Notre Dame. They were able with the scan to actually create the devils with a 3D printer. They printed it out in concrete, as beautiful as they were before. And now, while there's actually no skills worker anymore who is able to create those devils, or they are very scarce and very hard to afford, we are able to use the digital twins we made to actually bring back our beautiful memories in the real world, like this digital twin of the devil. What we've been doing is we've been helping cultural heritage to get a copy of their buildings as well. So what if this building is starting to get into fire? And what if this building is breaking down because of an earthquake or a hurricane? We still have a virtual version of it. So with this virtual version, we were able to bring it back to the real world, but we also can actually access it in the virtual reality world. And there, digital twin is born, when we have an identical copy of the real world into the virtual world, on the other way around as well. And I want you to explore this as well with me. This is a link that can bring you to the co-work space that we have scanned. It's called Seats to Meet. It's based in Utrecht. And what we would like to see is that more and more people starting co-working in the virtual and in the real world. So imagine having 10 people being there in person and having another 100 or 200 in the virtual world, because scalability is not the issue here anymore. It's only the internet connections that people have at home, and that they can access this building from the fingertips of their homes. So placing some cameras in the real world, projecting them in a world like Mozilla Hubs, where you can actually screen share and where you can showcase who is there in the real world, and at the same time having people working there in the virtual world, meeting with each other, talking to each other, co-working with each other and brainstorming with each other. Wouldn't that be amazing? Well, that's what is possible today, and that's what we are realizing here in that world. And I'm really excited about that, because if we look further, we can actually look at infrastructure and physics, and we can also use data on top of it to create and digitize a future scenario world. So here is an example of what we are working on with a school in the Netherlands to get the physics of the real world, the nature laws of the real world, also in that virtual twin. So real-time data for real-time impact. Imagine being able to prevent a flood in the Netherlands. A big issue that we have, and we always have to take into consideration, is that 1/3 of our country is below sea level. So when there is a big flood, we have to have a plan B and a plan C. And nowadays, we can create the educational environments to actually train models, train simulation data to give us our wind force 9. And what happens if we have that wind force 9 for a week or a month? What will happen to the lands we have? Will they flood or not? And this is creating a new environment for learning and for simulating together with the makers of dams and together with schools, for example. And I'm really excited about that part. But also I'm very excited about scanning myself into a virtual twin of myself. So here is me. I've been scanned, and now I'm able, with a suit on, to actually mimic my whole self. and actually real time have my whole body movement in there. And that's going a little bit further. So we had digital twinning of assets, digital twinning now of people, and digital twinning of processes and data, bringing us to actually the real world into a virtual world, and actually bringing us the tools that we can use, for example, for next level performances. And this is a TED Talk that I've given in the last month, where we are able to change the context. And this is now being used for live stream events. Instead of being there in person, we are mimicking the audience, but we are actually able to reach a lot more. And then we are getting to a point that we can travel to all that we miss and seek to explore. Because we as a human are adventurous. We want to travel, we want to share our ideas and culture. We want to bring home new ideas and explorations. And if we can no longer do that, we become poor ourselves as human. So we have to find ways to travel without congestion. And I think we got there. We finally got there, thanks to the technology you have today. What do you think? This is looking really cool, right? This must be a real experience. Going to Tomorrowland in the real world was a really good experience. But now, with a digital version of it, it's actually more beautiful than that. Unfortunately, it's just not multiplayer. So we're just watching live streams here. And that's not at all the experience that you can have in the real world. So the next step for them might be to change their live streaming into a game. Like, for example, Fortnite was doing. Or even better, turn it into a VR platform, a VR environment. Like we saw with Burning Man. That was done in Outspace VR, for example, where you can actually walk around with friends and communities and have a beautiful experience together. And that's about next level performing. Next level performing is also giving you all the extra virtual elements like superpowers and flying, and putting that into place when using and organizing events. For example, this Travis Scott event happening in Fortnite. It's a truly amazing experience with millions of people watching and attending in that game. And what if all of us were able to actually have some more senses in place? These gloves that I was wearing are giving me a sense of feeling hardness. So grabbing a glass has some force. So feeling the force of the real object, but then in the virtual environment is what these gloves are able to do. And being able to train people in skills we possess that they would need in their environment. So remotely actually skilling each other. And then what we see is in our research that people with zero knowledge are able to upskill themselves in no time to get an average level of expertise, because they're learning while doing. They're actually having a headset on, they move their head, they can walk around like it's in the real world, and they can take objects, they can move them around, and it's the real context. Sometimes, for example, with labs, medical labs and such things, it's very hard to give everyone access to such a lab, such a learning by doing environment. But now with VR, we can make it so accessible that if we have more than 375 students in a course, it's a no-brainer to not make it a VR course, because it's so much more cheap to organize it this way, and we can reach a larger amount of students and than we could ever done in physical environments. So that's also about preventing us and the surroundings from getting sick, because we no longer have to go outside and take the risk of giving other people a disease like we are facing right now. We are not able to go to school, or just 1% of the time or 20% of the time, and we are actually taking a risk there. So this is going to help us prevent people getting sick. And this brings you to a new learning model. So what if we digital twin everything? And that's our starting point. So we can throw away the books, because we now have a new format in which we can learn and actually have a simulation of what is written in the book. So we can actually feel with all of our hearts, where we are, what is happening. For example, when we are cutting trees, what will happen to the wild animals, and see that in front of our eyes, see the wild animals run away, and then have a lecturer, a teacher, presenting how big this issue actually is today. You will get a direct sense of feeling that you want to do something about this. And that's giving us in education more purpose by being in an immersion, being in an immersive environment, living it like it's real. Your brains will actually think it's real when you're wearing these headsets, because while moving forward and backward, it's actually doing so. So you actually can, I'm a gamer, so I can easily distinguish that it's not the real world. But if you're older and you've never played a video game, you actually have a feeling that it's the real world that you have that you have on your head out of a sudden. So this is a new learning model for upscaling people that really need to reskill, for example, their skills that are outdated. And the next step would be then to actually put data on top of it, so we can have real-time new understandings, and then put algorithms on top of that, so we can learn from the algorithms, and then we can actually create more and more wisdom with smart data coming together, different APIs and different data sets coming together, giving us new insights that could actually help us as humanity forward in solving the biggest quest. So from individual immersion to team collaboration, there has been different educational outcomes in which you can double as fast train yourself in an individual immersion environment, and you can even get 4 times as fast social skills in a multiplayer environment. And this is research done by PwC. We really have to have more and more researchers defining what are the key factors of doing so. So we actually know, okay, what elements are so important that we have to implement in education right away. But it's very promising. 4 times faster to learn a skill in VR than in a classroom setting. That's really promising. So imagine you can teach as a teacher about climate change in the middle of the nature. And imagine being able to give everyone the access to the technology needed, because that's now the problem. We have to use our 2D screens, our laptops, to actually educate people, which is always worse than a classroom setting. But if we are stepping into this, into the revolution of VR, we are able to give that 3D environment like the real world, add some suits, add some sensors, add brainwave scanning on top of it. We could have massive awareness about ourselves and our surrounding, and we could actually get a better learning environment than we ever had before. So here is the change of VR in emotional connection related to subjects when we are able to put a headset on. And you see that's also giving you much more purpose when you're learning. And this has been resulted in bringing over 50,000 people together in the last year in multiple platforms, in each goal done in a different way, from festivals to learning to co-working. All these things are now possible in over 50 free to use platforms. So that's the exciting time we are going to get into. That's the exciting digital twin era we have entered. So join me anytime and anywhere in the world of digital twins, and I'm looking forward to go on this adventure together with you. Thank you.